Y'all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up on a Saturday morning. I always say, if you can get 20 college kids to a Buddhist temple on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, then miracles do happen. So for all of you who don't think that miracles do happen, they do. It's always, for me, one of the greatest things, because I always feel like once you get them here, after that, it doesn't even matter. You know, they're inside the building at 8 o'clock, you've already pulled off an incredible feat. So some of you may have passed as our San Diego State group, and they do a day of silence retreat at the start of their pledge program. We used to joke about, being a co-ed fraternity sorority at San Diego State, that we don't haze. But we also used to take them up to Bao Fa Temple in Irvine, which is a very traditional Taiwanese Buddhist temple. And we wake up at 3:30 in the morning to start the morning what they call drum and bell and the chanting and the whole, ritual. And so we're in essence bowing and chanting from about 3:30 in the morning until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when we stop. And a handful of years ago, we were talking about whether or not that would be considered hazing. And one of the students, Mary, I'll never forget, she said, "It's not hazing, it's Buddhism." And so we stuck with that. But if you've never had the opportunity to do something like that, when things open up again, it's really beautiful to go experience other cultures with Buddhist practice. We've made it really easy for you. I mean, it's why we opened our Bum Temple 17 years ago, because if you all showed up here and then week 2, we told you to come at 4 in the morning and put on robes and shave your heads and bow and chant and did it in another language, you probably wouldn't show up. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock in a language you may understand, rolling in and rolling out after an hour, I think you're good with that. So hopefully we've made it accessible enough for you all. But it really is a beautiful practice. In fact, there was a documentary years ago, and they were asking some guy, the guy asked him, why do you get up at 3:30 in the morning? This was in a different Zen space. And the guy looked at him with a big smile on his face and started laughing and said, I had no idea. And that was it. And to me, that one answer was everything. And what I mean by that is no idea. It's just what they do. And so much of our lives can be stuck in some routine or way that you think you had to do things. I mean, how many of you have a morning routine? Like you did the same thing this morning that you did yesterday, and our hands are up, right? Maybe it's a little bit different because it's a Saturday, but you have these routines, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is. It's the same thing every single morning. And if you deviate from that just slightly, it just throws you off. And without even recognizing it, we are just stuck in these habitual patterns and behaviors. And when things arise that are different from how they normally would be, we don't know what to do. And then if you take that out to just everyday life, when things in your life happen that you don't expect, you weren't looking forward to, sometimes they're even better than you had anticipated. But when things just show up randomly in your life, it's like completely frying your system because it's not what you're used to having. And this practice is about just showing up and dropping any of the expectations after that. So anytime you have a chance to do things like that, it's really, really beneficial and helpful. Unless all of you are perfectly peaceful and happy all the time, then you can just continue how you're going about your day. So we won't worry about it. All right, so we're going to start with the meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. You're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps flatten the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also trying to sit up straight. Relaxing the shoulders. Hands can rest comfortably, knees, lap, or whatever works for you. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything with this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Letting go of expectation. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting, breathing. with the body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, Your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is initially. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this won't fix that. The meditation. It'll help you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then begin to make changes. Most people have been running from things their entire lives. And this practice is an opportunity to stop running and just sit. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do every moment of your life. It's an opportunity to reflect on what you think, what you say, and what you do. So you can begin to alter what we think, what we say, and what we do. This is what changes your life. Coming here doesn't change your life. You change your life, and it happens out there. People often say, like, oh, this place changed my life, or any place really, you know. But no place changes your life. You change your life. And that doesn't happen in here, that happens outside of here. In fact, in here, your life never changes. It's exactly the same. Every single time. But it's also completely different every single time. So now that I've clarified all of that for you, we'll go ahead and open up to questions. For me, I'd much rather always prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. For those who are joining virtually, again, welcome, glad you're here. As some of you are, feel free to say hello, and there's a chat box somewhere on your screen, so any questions or thoughts, you can put them there and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll spend the rest of our brief time this morning with questions, thoughts. I'll open up to you all.
Could you speak more about dependent origination?
Dependent origination. Yeah, so as I said, beginning, middle, of after every meditation practice, I always say dependent origination, pratitya samapata, is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. And I talked about this a lot on Tuesday, but before we even get into dependent origination, you have to understand, when I say you, I mean the collective you, all of us, have to understand what karma is. And karma, for those who don't know, is not what goes around comes around. It's not getting what you deserve. Karma literally means deed or action. And the Buddha taught we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind, what we think, what we say, and what we do. So all karma is the law of cause and effect. And dependent origination is very similar in a sense that it helps us understand that everything is conditioned upon something else for its existence. So I'll use the same example I gave Tuesday because it's the first one that popped into my head. The only reason I'm responding to this question right now is because you asked it. The only reason you asked it is because you walked through the doors of the Dharma Bum Temple, 30, 40 minutes ago. The only reason the doors of the Dharma Bum Temple are there is because in 1926-27, the Swedenborgian Church decided to build this thing. The only reason they decided to build this thing is because in the 1700s, a man by the name of Emanuel Swedenborg began to teach what became known as Swedenborgian community. So the only reason we're even talking right now is because of Emanuel Swedenborg. Now, when you ask a question, did it have anything to do with Emanuel Swedenborg? Were you even thinking about Emanuel Swedenborg? Any relevance to your life? No. But it is all contingent upon a trillion of things that have happened. From the moment Emanuel Swedenborg was born to this moment, a trillion things have happened that created this moment. Everything is contingent upon something else for its existence. Nothing can exist without something else existing. The law of cause and effect. Now, where this is beneficial and helpful, other than all of us just saying, yay, thank you, Emanuel Swedenborg, for being born, right? And then we got to thank his parents, and then endless time, and we'd spend the rest of our lives thanking every single person that came into existence. And, we'll be done in 20 minutes, so we don't have time for that. But why is this important? Any of you ever been mad at somebody recently? This morning, yesterday, today, right? Last week, 30 years ago? Do you know how many trillions of things happened for that situation to occur? But we're just mad at somebody else because of what they said or what they did. Do we know anything about what their life was like? Anything about their experiences? Anything that created their whole series of cause and effect? No. All we know is, what did they say to me that hurt me? Because what do we think life is all about? Ourselves. And it doesn't mean we're not important. It doesn't mean, we don't have feelings or emotions. It doesn't mean we're not going to get hurt by what people say and do. And it doesn't mean what everybody does is justified and right or okay. It's not. But if we begin to understand why things are happening, then we tend to not make life all about us. And it becomes about other people. And when there's no you, there's no suffering. So that's the practice. What else?
Is feeling lonely selfish?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question, especially for, is this your first time here? Yeah. I usually take it easy on first timers, but since you were brave enough to ask a question right away, I'm thinking you can handle this, right? Ultimately, I'll give you an ultimate kind of Buddhist lens answer or response, and then more practical, one that might actually help you, right? So the question of, is feeling lonely selfish, right? Well, in Buddhist teachings, ultimately, there is no self. Are you brand new to Buddhism also, or have you read a couple things? Kind of still new, yeah. So the Buddhist said there is no self. Now, what that means is, I should say what it doesn't mean that we don't exist, right? It doesn't mean that we're not here. What's your name?
My name's Chris.
Chris. It doesn't mean that Chris isn't there. It doesn't mean Chris doesn't have feelings and emotions and a life. And if Chris, cut his arm off, it's going to hurt. Chris is there. You just exist completely differently from how you actually are. Chris in this moment is just nothing but a whole series of events that have happened your entire life and stories that you have told yourself that have happened your entire life. Now, if the story you were told your whole life was that you were supposed to be alone, if that's what we, just work with me here for a minute. If your story, your whole life, every person, every family member, every movie, right? Every love story was about somebody falling in love with themselves. Or every love story was about somebody being alone and perfectly happy. If your entire life were those stories, you probably wouldn't be lonely. Because you wouldn't have been telling yourself your whole life, I need someone. I want someone. But because that's not how it's happened for any of us in this room, then the feelings arise of I'm lonely. I want someone with me. I want someone to share things with. I want someone to listen to me. I want to listen to someone. I want to have a meal with someone, whatever it might be. All those stories play in your head that create this feeling and emotion of loneliness. And the direct answer, just Jeff to Chris, I wouldn't suggest looking at being lonely as a selfish thing. I would begin to understand, like specifically, I'm not going to say, yes, it's selfish. It's not selfish. And even if it was selfish, that definition or label on something is meaningless. Because however we define an emotion doesn't mean that we don't feel that emotion. So to call it selfish or not selfish is completely irrelevant. It's important to understand that you and many people in this room feel that. So my question to you, not to answer right now, but to explore, is what are the reasons one feels that way? And this practice really isn't about finding someone else or being with someone else. This practice is about finding yourself and being yourself and learning to love and be okay with that person. Because very often when we're lonely, we don't feel okay and we don't think we're okay and we think somebody else is going to compliment us and make everything okay. I know it hurts, dude. I get it. We've all been there, you know? So that's the practice, is to understand that you're okay just how you are, right? And you don't need anyone else in your life to be okay. You ever watch Saturday Night Live back in the day? You remember Stuart Smalley? Yeah?
I'm good enough.
You're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you. Right? Now, the people that like you might not be the people you want to like you, but hey, we got to start somewhere, right? So that's the practice, is begin to understand, like, hey, I'm okay. I want to learn to love and be okay with myself. Because if we find people when we feel kind of broken and shattered, then we're just one mess meeting somebody else's mess. And two messes don't make a healthy picture. Two messes make a bigger mess. So, yeah, that's the short answer. Yeah, you're not selfish, you're just human. Yeah. What else?
If Buddhism is about the inner self, how do we deal with things that are affecting us, like externally, that we want to change?
The last part of your question was, so let me just repeat it for those virtually and just so I make sure I heard it okay. Your question was, if Buddhism is about your inner self, how do we, did you say deal with things external that we want to change? Finish that last part again, sorry.
Yeah, just like if there's stuff in your environment that you want to change, you know that's gonna like make things better. But it seems like Buddhism is more about kind of like dealing with it as opposed to like changing.
Why would you think Buddhism was about dealing with yourself? Because I just said that, I get it. So it's both. Your question really is around what in Buddhism, Thich Nhat Hanh became very famous for this phrase. He passed recently, but he built Deer Park Monastery, Plum Village in France, and worked very closely with Martin Luther King around social injustice. And the phrase is engaged Buddhism. So on one hand, yes, Buddhism is about, hey, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm depressed, right? The second noble truth the Buddha said is the cause of our suffering, greed, anger, ignorance, right? The first noble truth, he said, life is filled with dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. Most people, if you showed up here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, you figure that out. But the second thing is the cause, the greed, the anger, the ignorance, We overcome greed, anger, ignorance with generosity, compassion, wisdom. The third thing he says is the ending, cessation of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering. And the fourth is the path. This is called the Eightfold Path. Correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that available on Google for free. It's all like right there. It's all good. First 2, 3 Google searches, right? So that path starts with understanding that if we want to create change outside of us, that's beautiful and wonderful. But if we are angry and pissed off and filled with hatred and rage, how much is that going to play into what we're trying to change? The practice is to seek to create change outside of yourself, but not coming from a place of anger and hatred. To not hate the people who treat people a certain way, but to try to understand them. And if we can begin to understand them, then we can begin to maybe, work with them. But very often we see something we don't like and we immediately put the whole group of people in that category and say, I hate them, right? So it is definitely not ignoring social, economic, racial injustice in the world at all. Be aware of it. Engage with it. But from a place of compassion and as much wisdom as possible. That make sense? Yeah. And in fact, the last thing I'll say on that is within one school, Buddhism, the Mahayana school, which is Thich Nhat Hanh would fall into this category as well, but around engaged Buddhism is what's called the Bodhisattva practice. Bodhisattva literally means enlightened being, but the Bodhisattva path is that you work as an individual on your suffering and awakening, and just as you're about to enter into the pearly gates of Nirvana land, you turn around and you realize there's a whole world of people still suffering. So you take that boat and you go back. And the Bodhisattva vow is to be reborn life after life until all beings are free from suffering. So that requires not ignoring anything around you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So as you start learning about this philosophy or religion, you start being more mindful about your actions, thoughts, and words.
Yes.
So that automatically changes the view and the suffering you cause with your ignorance. But what about the previous suffering that you caused because of your ignorance to yourself and to others? What is the Buddhist approach to take accountability?
Yeah, good question around, and I'll kind of paraphrase it again for those virtually who didn't hear it. As you said, that as you begin to practice, you become more mindful of what you think, what you say, and do, and that just naturally, by default, creates better conditions and causes less, again, I'm paraphrasing, but creates better conditions and causes less harm. But your question is, well, what about the things you did previous to be mindful of what you think and say and what you do? You mean you have some things you've done in the past that weren't so kind? Two things, right? Let's address those two things, right? And they were the same day, I'm sure. I get it, and it happens. So a couple things, right? One thing my master taught years ago was that when you do things that you regret, you wish you shouldn't have done, there were three things to practice. One is to recognize what you did was not in accord with the teachings, the practice, right? Think kind thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. What you did was not within that realm. The second thing is to apologize if it's appropriate. Meaning, if it's something that's present in your life or someone present in your life and it makes sense, apologize. If you broke someone's heart 25 years ago and all of a sudden you've had your grand Buddhist, awakening moment of realizing what a piece of what you were, 25 years later, they're probably over it. They don't really want to hear from you, right? Like, hey, remember when I did that to you 25 years ago? Well, I'm Buddhist now. I'm sorry. It doesn't go over so well. So if you can't apologize to the person, then someone else present in your life, give that genuine apology about the situation from a long time ago. And the third thing is, which really addresses the heart of your question, is to then vow to not repeat the same thing again. So many times we do things that are harmful to self or others. And we're like, I'm never doing that again. Anyone ever remember that movie Train Spotting? Right? It was at that moment in time we decided never to do X again. And then the scene cuts immediately and they're all sitting around doing exactly what they said they were never going to do again. That's us so often. I'm never going to do that again. I feel so terrible. I hurt somebody. And then like an hour later, we're like, God, I'm doing it again. Right? So the vow is important, to vow to yourself to change. Now, it doesn't completely answer your question because you're asking about what about the past stuff? It's done, man. As Buddhist teachings say, all karmic seeds bear fruit. So, you know, I like to look at the metaphor. I got like a huge forest, redwoods, 25, 30 years of really not such great karma, right? And then I got about 20 years of a few little flower pots over here that are really small that I'm watering good karmic seeds, right? Well, those redwoods, they're going to come crashing down on me. And when they do, I need to make sure I continue to water the beautiful little flower pots over here. Because when the redwood comes crashing down on me, if I respond out of anger or whatever it might be, I'm just going to put more redwoods up. Redwoods in this metaphor are not good. We want the little flower pots over here. That make sense?
Yes.
So, yeah. And, the idea, again, ultimately in Buddhist teachings, when you look at cycle of rebirth and things like that, the ultimate teaching is that all karmic seeds bear fruit, but we don't know when. Could be an hour from now, could be a year from now, could be 5 lifetimes from now. I'm screwed. I don't know about you, but I'm just waiting. So, yeah. But I will add to that also that I think from an individual standpoint, if we are someone who has done a lot of just bad things in the past, harmful things that we regret, we wish we hadn't done, we harmed a lot of people. When I say it's done, you can't do anything about it, obviously, well, not obviously, I don't mean that it's like, well, it's done, sorry. No, I use it as a motivation. I don't spend time there hating myself for it, but I don't forget it either because it motivates and inspires me to not do those things again. Hold yourself accountable. You even said accountability. I'm accountable for all that pain I caused. I can't change it. I can't fix it. I wish I didn't do it. And I remind myself of that daily because that keeps me going. Otherwise, it would be too easy to default back to what I just knew for too long. So always hold yourself accountable, but don't hate yourself for it because that doesn't do anyone any good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What else?
During meditation, we're told to, the person, whatever, is told to acknowledge like thought, like past, blah, blah. So God, this in line with what you're talking about loneliness or feelings, you posed it in a way that was kind of like it's a construct that you can view and either challenge or reject.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does rejection, how much is rejection involved in meditation or the process of, healing?
Understood. I'm slightly confused, just to clarify. If I'm hearing you correctly, I think what you're asking me is acknowledging thoughts as they arise and kind of letting them pass by dismissing them or rejecting them. Is that what you're?
Yeah, sort of. That's part of it. So is that part of the process? Like,
Right.
Are you supposed to reason towards a better conclusion, or just what?
And when you say better conclusion, are you talking about the thoughts that arise?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. So again, this may or may not address that, but I think what you're saying, I'll just say this and see if it helps. Because ultimately, whatever you're saying around that doesn't matter because you're not supposed to do any of it.
Okay.
You're not supposed to reason it. You're not supposed to change it. You're not supposed to reject it. You're not supposed to accept it. By it, you're referring to your thoughts that arise, yeah?
Thoughts and feelings, you know, like.
Feelings don't arise until you have thoughts. Let's stick with thoughts. The feelings are caused by the thoughts. It happens real quick. I have a sad thought, I feel sad. I have a happy thought, I feel happy. Either way, it's all driven by your thoughts. The practice of training the mind, right, as the Buddha taught, if you're breathing in and taking a short breath, know you're breathing in and taking a short breath. If you're breathing out, taking a long breath, know you're breathing out, taking a long breath, right? So what most people do in meditation early on, by early on, I mean in like the first 10 to 15 years. I'm not even exaggerating. I mean that very seriously. Most people during meditation, I don't want to offend anyone and make you feel like you're bad people or bad meditators. So take this with a little asterisk. I love you all. But what most people are doing during meditation is one of two things. What are they? Thinking or sleeping. Yay. Thank you for the honest person that said sleeping. I wasn't sure. It was somewhere over here. But thinking or sleeping are the two things that most people are doing during meditation. Meditation should not be thinking, and it should not be sleeping. It should be focused on the present moment. Breath in, breath out. Thought arises. Recognize thought. Release it. Let me give you an example. You with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. What you want to do during meditation, right? Thought arises. Recognize it. Say it's hunger. Recognize that thought of hunger. You're not rejecting it, but you recognize there's hunger. Release it. Back to the breath. Breath in, breath out. Next thought. For me, it's just like visual cycle of just maddening thoughts just circling around. Thought arises, hunger. There's hunger. Release it, back to breath. Breath in, breath out, breath in. Oh, there's that hunger again. Release it, back to breath. That's what I want to do. What I don't want to do, thought of hunger. I'm hungry. What do I want to eat? I want a burrito. I'm going to go to Pokies. I want chips. I want sauce. You know, how much it's going to cost. Next thing you know, from one single thought of hunger, I sat there for 5 minutes thinking about a burrito I want to eat. And now I'm even hungrier than I was 5 minutes ago. So what you're doing is you're, in this example, you're feeding your thoughts. And your question to me sounded like, when I have my thoughts, am I supposed to reject them? Am I supposed to change them? Am I supposed to run with them? The practice is to release them, not jump on them like an airplane. Right? Now, why is this important? You ever been angry about something for 5 minutes or 10 years? I'm waiting for a head nod.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So when did that thing that you're angry about that happened 10 years ago, when did it happen? 10 years ago. And you're still angry about it today. But it happened 10 years ago. Interesting. You're still focused on it. Wouldn't it be nice to not carry that anger anymore?
Yeah.
Maybe stop focusing on it.
Okay.
Meditation is training the mind to be present. It's discipline. It's not escape. I will spend the rest of my life every single day trying to get people to understand this and fail miserably the rest of my life every single day. It is not thinking. It is not sleeping. It is focus on the present moment. Use a candle. Use a flower. Use an incense stick. Use a spot on the wall. Something neutral that you can just watch as you sit in meditation. Meditation is not a time to figure stuff out. Nothing wrong with sitting quietly and figuring stuff out. I'm all for figuring stuff out because God knows we all need it. But use meditation as a time to settle yourself. Right? Zen practice, there's a metaphor of a vase. You have a vase, you got sand and rocks and pebbles and water and everything in it. You pick it up and you start shaking it. As you start shaking it, what happens? Everything gets cloudy, everything's a mess. That's us. A little bit cloudy, right? Everything a mess. Set the vase down for a couple minutes. What happens? Settles. And assuming you started with clear water, you're back to clear water. Use meditation as a training to settle yourself into the present moment. And then When you're done with that, think about things. But don't call that meditation. Ever tried to figure stuff out when you're angry? Doesn't usually work so well. Settle yourself before you try to make, small or major life decisions. Because too often we're making decisions driven by our emotion. And that usually doesn't benefit anybody. So, does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one great way to start is to do an eyes open meditation practice. Pick a spot on the ground, 2 feet in front of you. So we'll try this real quick. Everybody close your eyes. And then slowly start to open them to where you're about 1 foot to 2 feet in front of you. So if you're on a chair, you're looking at the back of the chair. Wherever you're seated, about 1 foot or 2 in front of you, straight down off the edge of the nose. Not at your nose, you get dizzy, but down off the edge of the nose at the ground or wherever you're at. Next time you do your meditation practice, just do that. So for me, when I lead, my eyes are not closed. My eyes are open the entire time we're sitting here. I'm not looking at y'all making faces at you, but my eyes are open, present with what is. As soon as we close our eyes, we start into la la land and sleep. All right, we'll do one more question before we close. If anybody has anything.
So follow up to his question.
Yeah.
What is the role of choice in dependent origination? Is it the same as predetermination or?
You're getting into semantic. The question is, what is the role of choice with regards to dependent origination? Is it the same thing as predetermination? So you're getting into semantics, obviously, but when you say predetermination as if it's like predestination, that everything's already determined for you, that would be ultimately impossible in the law of cause and effect. Because and again, this gets into a major philosophical debate of free will and all that kind of stuff, I used to love talking about all that, and then I got into Buddhism and I realized it was meaningless. All I was just trying to do was like outsmart myself and then prove to everybody else that I could outsmart them, right? Everything that happens is conditioned upon the thing before. Choice. Every choice you make is with the knowledge and experience of what has happened up to that moment. It doesn't mean that you're not free to choose to do what you want, but to think that your choice isn't impacted by every single moment that has happened prior wouldn't be helpful. That makes sense?
Yeah.
We're free to choose anything we want to do, but it is all based on every experience we've had up to that moment. And I'll close with this thought. This is where, when you look at habitual patterns, behaviors, right, conditions that we have created over and over and over again in our lives. This is why change, for anyone who, dealing with addiction, things like that, this is why it's so difficult. Because we've created neural pathways in our brain over and over and over again to do the same things. Changing those things is a simple choice. But acting on that simple choice to change is not easy. So meditation and ultimately Buddhist practice is learning to recondition and rewire and change the gray matter of the brain. That's what it's getting at on a scientific level. And it does work. Science will show it. I don't care about science because science doesn't do me any good unless I do it. But all the science is there for it. So choice is really, and to me, where I look at Buddhist practice really helping along this line is coming back to the comment about the sense of self. When we go through our day and we put ourselves as number one, most important person in the world, what does every choice from that view tend to be about? So if all of a sudden we drastically shift and we realize that every other human, every other animal, every other thing is equally as important as we are, this is the first step on the Eightfold Path, is to understand that we're not the most important thing in the universe. If we can understand that everybody else is equally as important as we are, our choices will change. Because we see how we're harming other people because we're focused on greed. Root cause of suffering, greed. Greed isn't just like more money, more houses, more cars. Greed is thinking, I need, most importantly, to take care of me. Please take care of yourself. I'm not saying don't. Does that make sense? So yeah, our choices really are driven by everything that has happened our entire life. And then the practice is to figure out how to change the choices we're making that are harmful. And that can take some time. Yeah. At least 20 minutes. And then you're gonna So, all right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. And the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Greg Knox during his time of rebirth and to his family and friends who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from a different Buddhist tradition. Every Thursday, 5 o'clock, we do a food redistribution program. It really is, I still think, one of the best things we do here, and one of the best ways to get out of ourselves is when you make sandwiches and feed people sleep on the streets, downtown or wherever they are, it tends to put things into perspective. So when we feed people, we're putting their head on the sidewalk every night, it can really have huge impact on ourselves if you lack gratitude and appreciation for all you have. Other than that, we do have Monday night, Sozui, who runs the Hidden Valley Zen Center. A lot of you know her. She's been here in the past. We've taken groups up there to visit her. She'll be back again this Monday night at 7 o'clock for our Zen practice. So if you saw her in the past, or if you haven't seen her, she's really wonderful. She'll be coming down again from Hidden Valley. Other than that, yeah, thanks for being here. There's a list by the door if anybody wants to help clean or pick up outside or anything. There's always stuff to do. Buddha for you is there if you need anything. And thanks for being here. I wish you well.